very welcome again. Most of you have probably been here at one of the previous episodes. The last episode is about the illiteracy in housing. I'm sure Andrea will introduce the theme. I'm just going to say some things about the school. This actually is a historic moment because this is the very last public meeting that we are having in this location. Once you're gone, we are going to dismantle everything, pack boxes, and move next week to our new location in the Robert Fruinstraat. Does anybody know the number? In the I don't know the address yet. The Robert Fruinstraat, corner of the Heemraadsingel, 52, in the old archive building of Rotterdam. And so that's where we are moving next week. Now, the very first thing that we are doing in the new building is something that you can still sign up for. There are still one or two places, I suppose. Yes, it's the Into the Woods workshop. It lasts for 4 days, and it's on the 14th of March until the 23rd. It's a workshop with Peter Veenstra and Ronald Buiting, the landscape architect and the ecologist, and the subject is forestry. So we are going to actually build a tiny forest, a tiny urban forest. So the subject of the workshop is urban forestry, and we are actually going to make a tiny forest somewhere in Rotterdam. So you can still sign up for that via our website. Now, the second thing that you can also sign up for, it's and you're all very much invited for it. It's our huge housewarming party, which also is the 49th Schools Out lecture that we are organizing. And it's a very special one. Our guest is Oliver Wainwright, Oliver Wainwright, the architecture critic of The Guardian, who is now traveling around the entire world, visiting mega urban developments like Neom or Nusantara in Indonesia or Dubai, or all the kind of mega branded AI designed, actually that's what they look like, mega investments around the world. And he's going to talk about those on the 28th of March. And then afterwards there will be DJs and food and drinks, etc. So that's on the 28th of March. And the third thing is, you still, if somebody is interested and has some weeks to spare in the coming spring, our yearly 3-month course called This Is Tomorrow. You can still apply for it. You can either apply for the entire 3-month course, which starts in early April and then goes on until late June. But you can also apply or not apply. You don't have to apply for those. You just can sign up for one of the 3 parts that it consists of. The first one is about temporary habitation of the city, going from tourists to labor migrants to asylum seekers to the homeless to etc. We are doing that together with Loom, of which we are. No, that's not. No, you're doing the third. Sorry. We're doing that together with Teun van de Ende, who's also from Vers Beton. Then the second one goes from 12th of May until 30th of May. This one is about the way that Rotterdam Harbor and the Dutch economy plays a central role in the agro industry and thereby destroys the earth. And we are looking at that through one tiny thing, the soybean. So for 3 weeks, we are going to focus on the soybean, how it travels around the world, and creates havoc everywhere, and the central role that Rotterdam Harbour plays in it. And the third one we are going to do with Loom. It starts on the 2nd of June and until the 20th of June, and it is about protest in the city. So, and it is about, but it is also a workshop. So we will learn techniques of how to protest, how to package a message, how to subvert a structure, how to preach, how to convince, etc. So these are three separate workshops. You can take them as a package or take one of them. So now I would like to invite our wonderful Andrea Prins to introduce today's theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Wouter. This series is about the lack of affordable social housing in the Netherlands. Under the rule of center-right politics, housing has been liberalized, which means housing is mainly about investing. Even more sadly, this is also the case for social housing. So in a way, it makes sense that current debates focus on numbers and regulations. But this narrowing perspective ignores something important: the resident and the act of housing itself. As a result, social housing is not only scarce, it also suffers from a negative imago. Worse, extreme right now is misusing social housing, or rather its scarcity, as a populist weapon against entire population groups. This series aims to shift perspective. Thank you, Michel, Wouter, and Mike, for this opportunity to discuss important issues that are underrepresented in current Dutch debates. In the first session, we talked about compact floor plans. Ever more often, compactness is seen as a hands-on solution to lower housing costs. It is a solution not without risk. Apartments are becoming so small that they lack quality to live in. Beatrice Ramo, Fenna Hakma-Wagener, and Job Floris presented rich ideas on compact and decent floor plans. One of those examples is Beatrice's project in Ivry, near Paris. It features intelligent floor plans that, in addition, can shrink and expand if needed. In the second session, we focused on the term social. Traditionally, in Holland, social housing is framed as help for people in need. However, Bernd Flei's example from Vienna showed that social can mean so much more. In Vienna, social housing is understood as a collective socio-political priority. Policymaker Anne-Jo Visser shared her profound knowledge of the Dutch social housing system. We saw carefully programmed common spaces and floor plans tailored to diverse needs of tenants, for family life and beyond. Beside these specific designed housing types, we saw loft-like generic floor plans that invite tenants to customize them. Just to be overly clear, all of this has been realized in social housing. Anne-Jo talked about how social housing in Holland has evolved from a tool to ease housing shortage to a tool that our government cheerfully burdens with taxes. And she shared her dream of reinventing social housing as a powerful mixed is a powerful force for mixed and therefore more stable neighborhoods. Key to realizing inspiring social housing projects is a headstrong municipality and an architect, supervisor, or developer who insists on quality, even if that means being the most hated person of the project. In addition, decent social housing also requires novel processes, such as in Paris, where developers had to apply to participate to a project. A project that was defined by the architect and the municipality. In Vienna, developers team up with architects to submit the best proposal in terms of design and social sustainability. Like in Paris, developers have to compete to meet the project goals set by the city. This forces developers to be inventive. And by the way, if things nonetheless are in danger to go wrong, being the darling of the press also helps an architect to succeed. And while discussing social housing systems, we saw a big difference between Vienna and Holland. Very simply put, in Vienna, social housing is subsidized. In Holland, we subsidize home owners, while corporates pay taxes. So tonight we will address the notion that homes nowadays first and foremost are seen as an economic asset. Abroad they call it the Dutch way. This has not only led to a more and more unequal access to affordable housing. There's a second and more hidden result. There seems to be a lack of knowledge. We think that home ownership is the one and only housing solution, even if buying only brings misery, for example, because of crushing debt. We got obsessed by buying. Where did it come from? It is no secret that home ownership was heavily stimulated in the Netherlands. The main idea was that people with property would be less interested in lefty ideas. If you own something, you want to keep it. And the act of securing property is conservative. Goodbye squatting, strikes and protest marches. Home ownership, the idea was, works as a hand-on insurance against socialism. And as we already discussed in the second event, house owners are subsidized. And then, of course, there's the construction industry itself. It is an important sector of the economy with an effective power and lobbying position. It is doing well with a vibrant market for ever larger new homes. A year ago, I talked to the South Korean researcher Boram Kim-hur. Besides much more, she investigates just housing. Also, inhabitants in South Korea suffer from housing inequality. I asked her what might be needed to implement fair housing in Seoul. She said, "There is so much misleading information about the benefits of buying. You need to teach people the benefits of renting." And then she said, "You have to improve housing literacy." I never forgot that. Tonight, we will try to understand what housing literacy might mean. Our first speaker is Nicolas Bernard. Nicolas, you are a professor of law in Brussels and a philosopher. Some weeks ago in Antwerp, I saw you being interviewed in a video called "The Challenges of Living Together." Among much more, you were talking about our collective fascination or obsession with home ownership. And you mentioned alternatives, perhaps less costly for the community and more social, and maybe even more compact. I am very happy that you accepted to share your thoughts tonight.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, sorry. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for your kind words, Andrea. So, I must first triply apologize. First, my English is not very fluent. Secondly, I'm a lawyer, so I will talk about law and from a legal standpoint. And thirdly, I'm Belgian. Yeah, sorry for that. But okay, I will manage. So my thesis is relatively conventional. We can overcome the housing crisis and improve people's living conditions by diversifying solutions and by innovating. And my sub-thesis is that to diversify, we must dare to rethink, to redesign the two main pillars of housing policy, which are social housing and property ownership, as Andrea said. So let us start with social housing. There is a big problem in social housing in Belgium for a long time. This is the waiting list, the queue to enter social housing. And the list, the queue, not only this queue doesn't shrink, nor even stabilize, but this queue grows and grows and grows despite the efforts to expand housing stock units. So it's a problem because in Brussels, 100,000 people are waiting on this list, and in the meantime, they live in private rental sector, which is on average twice as expensive than the social rental sector. So social housing absorbs 2/3 of the Brussels budget on housing. It's a huge 2/3, and the results are not very convincing. So we need to evaluate budgetary efficiency of the social housing. In other words, what is the ability of social housing to achieve its goal to the best cost? In other words, are the results worth the expenses? And if not, are there alternative ways to maybe achieve the same goal at a lower cost? Maybe by stepping outside the framework, thinking out of the box. This is the ambition of what it's called spending review, revue des dépenses, spending review. That's an approach, a policy which is adopted by several European countries. And I had the chance a few years ago to make a study on this topic. So my reasoning followed two steps. First of all, I had to identify some alternatives to social housing, alternatives that achieve the same goal to offer an affordable rent to people with modest incomes. So what are these alternatives? First, innovative construction. Innovating construction, it means public authorities, they build, but they build with innovating techniques such as maybe wooden frames or prefabrication techniques. Second alternative, turnkey solution. It means in French, clé sur porte, in Dutch, sleutel op de deur. And here public authorities, they do not build themselves, but they purchase pre-built homes from private actors, And then public authorities, they make these pre-built homes available to poor people. Third alternative, rent allowance. If the ultimate goal of social housing is to offer people an affordable rent, so it is also possible, instead of providing a home directly, it's possible to offer financial assistance to the people who wait on the waiting list. And this aid will cover the difference between the rent the people pay in the private sector and the rent they would pay in the social housing sector. For municipal housing at social rates. In Belgium, municipalities, they manage thousands of houses, but not at social rates, at rents which are higher than social rates. And so you see here the idea is to grant these local authorities a subsidy to lower their rent at the social levels, and the subsidy will compensate the loss of income. So, second step of the reasoning, once these different alternatives are identified, I had to compare them, and I chose 3 criteria. Not only the cost, of course, but also the time frame. I mean, the time it takes for the solution to be operational. And also the development potential. That means the number of people that can be helped, assisted by this way. And the results are, so first picture of social housing with wooden frames in Brussels and prefabrication social housing in France. So now the comparison results, we see directly that traditional construction, I mean construction by public authorities, is quite long. Construction is very long, almost 8 years, mainly due to public procedures. Marché public, we say in French, overheidsopdrachten, also government approvals, urban planning permits, so it takes long. And the cost is high, as you can see. Cost is high, explained by the renovation costs on the long term, and this renovation cost is as high than the construction cost itself. And finally, the potential is conditioned. Its condition is not very high because this solution, this classical solution, depends closely on the availability of land, and land is a rare resource, a scarce resource in Brussels. Brussels is a small region, so land is rare. Comparison now with innovative construction. As you can see, the time here is shorter, only 4.5 years, because prefabrication or wooden frames can save time in the construction phase. For instance, prefabrication takes only 6 months compared to 36 months for the classical construction. So if we can build faster, we can build more social housing and then reduce the waiting list. Sorry, nope. So now the turnkey solutions, clé sur porte, sleutel op de deur. You see that here there is a slight additional cost, a bit more expensive. Cost, it's explained by the cost of acquiring a land because in the public approach, the land is not purchased by the authority, but provided by another public authority. But this option is much more faster, not even 2 years, because private actors, they do not have to go through long and complicated procedures as the public authorities do have to follow. What about the housing allowances? Time frame is zero delay, because it only requires to releasing the funds. And we do not have to build houses. The houses are already built. The beneficiary, he already lives in a home. And it's quite cheaper, because you don't have to build a home. The home is already built. And it's a bit the same for municipal housing at social rates, zero delay, and a cost which is quite low. So this study does not take a side, does not choose an option rather than another one. No, this study simply highlights some advantages or disadvantages of each option, and so it's up to the political sphere to take the legislative conclusions on it. So now let's move to property, which needs also to be revisited. Alors, why this focus of ownership? And I will make echo to what Andrea said. Why this focus on ownership? Simply because our authorities do. Our governments, they implement several policies to promote access to property, especially fiscal policies. And these policies has its virtues, its justifications. Firstly, compared to renting, property protects occupants from the landlord's changing decisions and guarantees a certain independence and stability in the home. Secondly, the management power that property grants to its owners. This power allows the owner to invest materially, emotionally in the home, and this will allow the occupant to shape it as they wish, which create a strong sense of ownership. Thirdly, the overall quality of housing in a city tends to improve with a higher proportion of owners. Each owner becomes, in a way, the caretaker, the concierge of their property. People take better care of what they own rather than what they rent. Moreover, property is a form of forced savings. Why? Because you have to repay a mortgage, and then the owner accumulate a capital which they will recover when they will resell the house, and then they can reuse this capital to another purpose. In contrast, rent payments, the huur, le loyer, rent payments, are a sort of financial loss for tenants. Tenants never get the payments back. And finally, property is a kind of shield, edge against inflation, given that the mortgage payment often remain identical. Each month it's the same amount, but the huur, the rent, is indexed. So mortgage is flat. However, this strong policy towards property has its dangers, perverse effects. First, this policy has a significant cost for the community. This cost is often not debated because it's not visible. And why is it not visible? Because it consists of tax exemptions, no tax, and the loss of revenue for the state doesn't exist in a budget state. But direct expenses, subsidies, they are visible in a budget state, but the exemptions, they pass through. Second perverse effect, property price, you know, the prices tend to rise rapidly, and so they de facto exclude poor people, low-income households, and even with the state aid, buying a home is too expensive, remains too expensive for poor households. And this leads to a paradox, which is those who need public assistance to become owners, they do not apply for it because property is still too costly. But meanwhile, those who benefit from this public aid are the wealthier, the richer people who could have afforded to buy property without state support. And this is what we call in French effet d'aubaine, maybe in English windfall effect, copie maybe in the Netherlands. And in other words, those who need don't benefit, and those who benefit didn't need. 4. Studies show that such financial aids, by increasing buyers' purchasing power, these aids lead to higher property prices. It's the simple effect of supply and demand dynamic. And the result of this is that the financial aid by the state ends up in the seller's pockets rather than helping the buyer. Actually, the seller knows this aid and adapts his price to get it higher. 5. People that purchase property with state support, they can, after a minimum occupancy period, they can resell the property at the price they want. So it means that these state-assisted people, they can turn public financial support into purely private benefits, profits. 6. Moreover, when you resell a house in Belgium, I don't know, in Netherlands, sorry, there is no tax on the added value, on the benefit, toegevoegde waarde. There is no tax. And this will encourage, of course, speculative buying and selling system, because there is no tax on transaction. And that, of course, it will drive up the prices. And housing, so in this way, is seen as a financial product to maximize the returns rather than seen as a basic necessity that should remain accessible to all. 7. The obsession, 7, I don't know, yeah, 7. The obsession with property, and I repeat what you said, Andrea, the obsession with property leads some people to borrow a lot of money and heavy debt, and so they are vulnerable to financial difficulties, default, foreclosure, and maybe evictions. 8. Property ownership is seducing often because it allows people to distance themselves from each other, allows to expand their living space, and then this drives people to prefer individual houses, detached houses, 3 or 4 facade houses, vierkant huis, but everybody likes this kind of home, but this kind of housing is consuming a lot of energy and a lot of land. So, the question is, given all these negative aspects, why do public authorities continue to promote this kind of policy? Maybe we can identify 3 reasons. First, and I make also echo to what Andrea said, first, to become an owner, you mostly have to borrow money to take a mortgage and, of course, to repay this mortgage. And this compels people to work steadily to reimburse the payment. And for public authorities, the mortgaged property is maybe a means to ensure that people remain productive, remain working hard, and it's important for the owner to avoid eviction for their family. Second reason, property is often promoted in an individualistic manner, as we said, which allows authorities to prevent potential dangerous collective dynamics. This approach allows authorities to dilute possible hotspots of social protests. Indeed, isolated people are easier to control than larger groups. This is the reason why, for example, Belgium developed policies to promote property, especially for workers. Because it's more comfortable for authorities to put workers separate from each other in small housings. At the countryside, it's better than the workers, they will gather from other workers at urban centers, and it will maybe make undesirable connections. It's dangerous, so you have to dilute the danger. And on the architectural level, we had cité jardin, garden cities. Maybe you have the same in Holland. I will show a picture just after. Third reason, tax revenues. Owners generate revenue for the state, both at the time of purchase, we call droit d'enregistrement, registrasierechten, and each year, we call précompte immobilier, onroerende voorheffing. So it's a huge revenue for the state. So now, if we really want to promote a sustainable and financially viable housing solution, viable as for the budget state and as for the people, we should consider alternatives. What alternatives? First, Cité Jardin, Garden City, two in Brussels, Le Logis and La Cité Moderne, two social housings 100 years ago to separate workers and to make them good citizens. So, first, alternative dismemberments of property rights, splitting of property rights. This dismemberment means separation between ownership of the land and ownership on the surface. I told you I'm a lawyer, and this is a legal mechanism. There are actually two legal mechanisms in Dutch: erfpacht, it means amphithéose in French, and the other one, recht op opstal, superficie. These mechanisms exist in the Dutch law, I can guarantee. And the principle is the same. The beneficiary can't build on someone else's land. The beneficiary doesn't own the land, but he can build on the land of another. And the beneficiary will own the house he had built. And even if the land is pre-built, the beneficiary will also be the owner of the building pre-existing built. So this is quite interesting, and but it is doubly limited. First, limited by time, maximum 99 years, and limited by the object, because the land remains the property of the owner of the land. But the beneficiary, he doesn't care. What it cares for him, it's to build and to be owner of what he has built. And what happens at the expiration of 99 years, maximum? The splitting stops and ownership is reconstituted in the hands of the owner of the land, who becomes the owner of everything, including what the beneficiary has built. But the beneficiary can receive a compensation at this moment for what he has built. And in any case, the parties, at this time, at the expiration of the right, the parties can decide to conclude a new agreement obstal of Erfpacht. And maybe you know the city of Louvain-la-Neuve, which is the most recent city in Belgium, 50 years ago only, and a city which was created to host the Université Catholique de Louvain, which was expelled from Catholic University at Leuven. So it's Belgian story. Belgium is the country of surrealism. So this is our story, and we had to create a new city from nothing, and we decided to build this city entirely of the system of Erfpacht, amphitheos, in order to prevent speculation. And what is the advantage of this mechanism? Mainly the costs. The cost, why? Because the land is not included in the transaction. You don't buy the land. But when you buy in full ownership, of course, you buy the land on the top of it. And you know, the cost of land itself heavily weighs on the calculation of the price. 20%, 25%, 30% in certain high pressure zones. Here, you don't pay the land. And the transaction price itself is also lower, because Erfpacht or Obstal, they are time limited. But when you buy full ownership, so it's permanent. So Erfpacht is less expensive. And because the cost is reduced, the duration of the repayment of the mortgage is also shorter. So it will reduce the burden of mortgage interest. And finally, the tax. The tax is much more interesting for this dismemberment. It's twice more lower than the tax on the full ownership property. So in total, the cost for this dismemberment is the half. Second alternative, community land trust. This is a concept born in the United States, but 15 years ago, this concept was introduced in Brussels legislation. And what is a community land trust? It's a non-profit actor, but it's subsidized by a state, but a non-profit actor that buys land and builds on it or renovates buildings on it, and then the CLT will grant Erfpacht or Obstal for poor people, which give them property for 50 years. So here there is also Erfpacht or Obstal. So separation between ownership of the land and ownership of the surface of the buildings, and it's very fundamental because the aim of CLT is to remove the land from private market, remove it from individual appropriation. Land must be safeguarded, and the CLT is dedicated, tasked to managing it in the public interest for the benefit of the whole society. And so the CLT cannot sell the land, cannot. And we have to preserve land because we have to preserve access for future generations. Otherwise, one day there will be no more land available at an affordable price. And development in Brussels, we have about 100 buildings from the CLT, and it will expand in the next years. Second characteristic, first characteristic of CLT is safeguarding of the land. Second characteristic is limitation of resale price. What does it mean? The price, the resale price is capped, is limited. This price is not freely set by the beneficiary when he sells his rights. No, we don't want him to pocket the entire capital gain. No, the price corresponds to the initial amount, the amount the seller has paid at the beginning. We just increased the initial amount by the investment the beneficiary has made in the building. And we add also only a quarter of the plus-value, the capital gain, the toegevoegde waarde, only a quarter. So what happens? The CLT will buy back the property, droit de préemption, voorkooprecht, and then the CLT will offer the same building to a next buyer at the same price. The price will remain affordable. And in this way, the financial accessibility of housing is guaranteed for the long term, and there is no possibility of speculation. And then public authorities, they do not longer need to always provide financial assistance for each new transaction in private sector. No, once the initial subsidy has been paid to the CLT for the purchase of the land, for example, so the system becomes self-sufficient. Third characteristic, it's the collective management of the CLT. I mean, it's a tripartite management, three parties. First, residents of the building, or maybe over the future residents. Then the local community members, the neighborhood, and the public authorities. Three parts. First, residents or future residents of the CLT. They are involved in a project from its conception, from the very beginning. They are consulted about the design, about the layout of the building, and they think about this design together as a group, as a community. Secondly, community members, neighbors. They are also included even if they do not live on the site, but they are directly affected by the construction because they are the neighbors. And so their opinion is very valuable because they say, this construction is not at a reasonable size, it's too high, too big, or maybe they want a mix of urban functions, not only housing, but also culture, shops, schools, kindergartens. So it makes a small piece of a city, not only a place for poor people, but a diversified building. There is another advantage of involving neighbors, local community members, is that the construction of this socially oriented building, this construction will be more easily accepted by them, by the neighborhood. And we prevent the well-known NIMBY effect, not in my backyard. It means everyone agrees that social housing should be built, but not in my backyard, not in our neighborhood, elsewhere, far from there. This is some pictures of Community Land Trust Brussels, a picture of building, and picture of this group, this large community of residents and neighbors. Third alternative, the housing cooperatives. Housing cooperatives, in general, a cooperative is a commercial company with the particularity that its shareholders are the users of the enterprise they created, and vice versa. I mean, the users are also the shareholders. In a way, the users are the bosses, the owners. And moreover, cooperatives are based on high ethical principles. First, self-management, because users have decision-making power. Second, equality among members, because the number of votes at the General Assembly, for example, the number of votes is not linked to the number of shares held. No, it's a principle, one man, one woman, one vote. Third principle, a principle of non-speculation, because the reimbursement of the shares, when one shareholder wants to leave, the reimbursement is made at the original value, the amount of the beginning. So this is for the cooperative. But what is specifically a housing cooperative? So it's a company that owns one or more buildings and where the residents are also the shareholders. But these shareholders, they do not own the building. No, cooperative owns it. Shareholders, they don't own the building, they own a share. But this share will give them a right to occupancy, long-term right to occupancy, right which is defined by the cooperative, but they are also the bosses of the cooperative. So for a shareholder, first they make financial contribution to the company to buy shares, then they become residents and they pay a sort of rent that covers occupancy charges. And more interesting, the cooperative pursues a common goal that goes beyond the individual interest of each resident. For example, the return of shares, the dividend, these returns is limited at 6% because shareholders, they prefer to reinvest the profit in the cooperative, in the project's cooperative. They prefer to reinvest rather than enriching the shareholders. Another advantage, the housing cooperative facilitates the access to housing because the amount required to buy shares is much lower than what is needed for purchase a property. You only have to buy some shares and you become shareholder. It's much cheaper than the property. And moreover, there is no tax on buying shares. And compared to renting, the cooperative member who leaves, he will recover the amount he he gave at the beginning. When he leaves, he will be reimbursed for the value of his share. So he leaves with his initial stake. He doesn't leave without nothing. And in comparison, tenants never get back their rent payments. So in conclusion, if you aspire to a more collective, a more social, a more participatory, a more democratic, a more self-managed and anti-speculative lifestyle, so then the cooperative is the legal tool made for you. And countries like France, Uruguay, Switzerland, Italy, they already provide strong aid, strong public aid to cooperatives, which explain the intense development of cooperatives in these countries. In Belgium, it's starting to take off, but what about Netherlands? So, two pictures, cooperative, village de passage in Brussels, Forêt, you know, once again, many people, it's a project with much people, much individual. So, to finish, I would like to underline the role of architecture in these efforts to redefine housing. I think architecture has a triple role to play. First, it can redesign, rethink collective housing in an original way. Architects can create new type of collective housing, which are not entirely collective, but which combine both private spaces and collective areas. For example, intergenerational houses are quite interesting because a young person lives with a senior, elderly person, and they give mutual services. Second role of architecture is imagining the modularity of our homes. Once again, Andrea already said a few words on it. The modularity means that our current homes today, they are too fixed, too rigid in relation to life's changes. When children grow up and leave the family nest, the home becomes too large. And with many rooms empty, we have an oversized home, which is an absurdity. So architecture must find new technical ways to transform this single family home, partially empty, to transform it into new, smarter, smaller housing units. How? Through, among others, through partitions, Verdecchia, cloison en français, Verdecchia. I mean, the walls, they have to move. Walls, Verdecchias, they can be moved or removed or added to accompany their evolutions of the family. Walls must be movable walls. And what is important to understand is that we have to integrate this modularity at the very beginning, directly into the construction, because afterwards it's too late. It's technically impossible to move a wall once it's built. So it must be designed from the start. Third role of architecture, is a paradox. Is not to finish the houses. Not to finish the houses, so because it might be interesting for the residents to finish the work themselves by doing the finishes, les finitions, afterwerkingen, They can choose the paint, choose the flooring, choose the type of interior layout. So, and this is the paradox, the architect must be held back from putting the final touch. Why? Because, in my opinion, it helps with the appropriation of the housing by the resident. This concept of appropriation is very important for residents to feel at home, to maintain the housing, to be a concierge, and to invest in the housing. The house, so, can become a home. Is best, you say, but you know the same in English, home and house and home. The house must become a home, a place where you feel good, your place, a place you co-constructed, even if it was at the end of the process. And the more a home is appropriated, the more the resident will develop a sense of belonging to their home. And moreover, not to finish, home is cheaper for the buyer. And this is especially important for social housing. We see in the social housing strange situation, I mean damage caused by the residents themselves. Why? Because the residents, they do not perceive the housing as their own housings. No, it's housing of another. And social housing is too often architecturally standard. It's the same. Each home is exactly the same as that of the neighbor, and the housing does not necessarily match the needs and the desires of each occupants. So residents should be allowed to finish the work and appropriate the housing, which will ensure greater longevity in the home. So some picture, intergenerational housing. In Brussels, we have plenty of this kind of building. Modularity, which wall can move, added, removed. And unfinished home, we say casco. We deliver homes casco. It means, okay, you have to finish. And maybe that will meet the needs of the buyer. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thanks, Nicolas. That was incredibly, how do you call this? Incredibly literate in the way that it helps us to really understand the logic of the question. I think it is really useful. Thank you very much. Save your questions and remarks, etc., for a little bit later, because first I'd like to introduce Andrea Verdecchia to you. Andrea is of the practice Time to Access, an Amsterdam-based practice that makes radical architecture. And the interesting thing with radical architecture, do not think about strange shapes, but think of the root of the word radical, which is root. And so it really goes to the actual foundations of what makes you could say what is the social role of the architect. So how to think about housing, how to think about public space, how to think about the actual building of renting, etc. of how. So the real foundation on which architecture rests. Andrea will probably talk also about his, I think it's a key project, an iconic project for the Nieuwe Meent in Amsterdam Watergraafsmeer. And so we're very happy to have Andrea Verdecchia with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm one of the co-founders together with Mira Nekova of Time to Access. We are architects. Yeah, we specialize in these 4 topics in co-housing, sustainability, affordability, and co-production. I'm gonna focus now on mainly one project that is called the New Element. We are a new firm. We started to operate in 2019. And the New Element is going to be our first build project, actually. It's almost finished. And where do we come from? Yeah, we come from housing crisis. We were working in the Netherlands for, myself, 15 years for renewed Dutch offices, doing housing for private developers. And at one point we thought, maybe we should find another way that make us happier and also that tries to provide that diversification that is necessary in the housing market. So I can skip this slide, but on the first ground you have all the problems, and in the background there is a picture from one of the Vaughan protests of a few years ago that probably you all know. This was one of the Amsterdam's edition. There was also a Rotterdam, I think, edition. So these are the groups we work with. You can call them our clients, but we usually don't use this term. Of our 4 main projects, and you can see that they are kind of normal people like everyone, but they are collectively making big housing projects. 40 houses, 130 houses, 45, 18 houses, on the range of millions of investment without having the means to do them. Well, the housing cooperatives were already introduced, so I don't need to spend too much words on it. There is one big fundamental difference with what Nicolas explained about cooperatives in Belgium, that here you don't build shares. So the ownership of the building is collective. The members collectively own the building, but paying rent, they don't build up equity. They are not shareholders. They are only collective owners. So once you leave the project, you get back a small initial investment. For example, the New Element, there is only a INLEG membership contribution of 2,000 euros. So the threshold to enter is very low. When you leave, you get it back, but you don't build any share. And you keep paying rent. So housing cooperatives is known as the third way. There is an attempt in the Netherlands. Well, it's not a new history. Housing cooperatives were popular in the end of 1800, the beginning of 1900, especially for workers' residents. And then slowly those cooperatives, they grew. They've been recognized and started to receive public aid, and they transformed in what we know today as social housing corporations. So they scaled up and they disappeared in their more independent form until their reintroduction in the new Housing Act of 2015. And from there on, well, they didn't completely disappear, but well, they were not so popular as now. From that moment on, a few municipalities, especially Amsterdam, are trying to push again the format via the means of revolving funds to give loans to cover financial gaps, reserving plots in the city. And in the action plan of Amsterdam of 2018, there are big goals that are not being met so far, but still there is an intention of developing. The short-term goal was 20 cooperative buildings in Amsterdam within 2028. 7,000 housing units by 2030. I don't think we're going to get there. And 10% of the entire real estate portfolio of the city in 2050 by means of new buildings, but also selling existing apartments, especially social housing, to cooperatives. What you see here is a map of Amsterdam with the locations under development so far. Only 3 buildings built, the others ongoing, a few promised, and we are involved in 4 of them. And one of them is the new amend. So yeah, I forgot to put this slide, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway. So how we got involved, we saw an announcement via somebody published this postcard with written build a post-capitalist commune, urban commune in Amsterdam. So we jumped on it, and we met this community of people that were coming from another alternative space in Amsterdam Oost called Newland. And let's say what happened is that this community, they brought in their vision for a new way of living together, their social value and organizational skills. And me, together with my partner Mira and another co-architect, Ru, we brought in our more technical skills as designers, but also as kind of real estate developers. So what we saw applying in the commercial market, we tried to translate in this new venture. The new amend is built on 4 core values: commoning, that is also a verb, like housing, commoning, care, diversity, and sustainability. Is building of, with a mixed program. We have some independent houses, living groups, and it's built in a leftover field that was empty since ever, very close to the railroad, that the city decided to dedicate to one of the 3 pilot projects of Amsterdam for cooperatives. This is one of the old renders. The building is 2,300 square meter gross floor area, BVO. It has 15 social housing units, 5 living groups, each with between 4 and 6 units. So in total it's kind of 40 housing units, and it will be habited by about 65 people. And there is also here on the corner a non-housing space. Well, here you can see the 3 legs of a project, of this kind of project, a cooperative project, that is design, governance, and finance. The project is self-developed by the cooperative that need to arrange everything from defining their governance model, what are the different bodies that take decisions and run the project now and in the future when after they will move in. They need to put together all the finances, and they are involved since day one into the design. Both in the definition of the program and up to the look and feel of the building and so on. Maybe a few words on the business case. You see in the inner part of the cake that 90% of the project is built on loans, built on debts. And only 10% of the money are brought in the project by the members via a very small initial contribution and other subsidies that they raised during the development. And what you see in the outer circle is the multiplicity of sources. So in a way, this automation of the governance, what you see upright, and of the finances also reflects the collective aim of the project. Well, the co-design was the most fun part. The finance was probably the most difficult. But yeah, within the last years, we spent a lot of time on discussing ideas and yeah, designing together what we built. About collective spaces and private spaces. So this is a co-housing project, kind of I would say in the bit of extreme range towards the collectivism. 35% of the spaces that are built are collective spaces. How does that work? When we calculated the program of the building, we reserved a certain amount of square meters for each household, and then of this amount, a small quota went into the collective spaces. To make an example, an apartment of 50 square meters is 45 square meters private and 5 square meters collective. And if you put together all these small collective square meters, you will get large spaces that the community can use to complement their private functions. Simple example, you don't need a space for your washing machine, and you don't need to buy it because it's collective. You don't need a big table for big dinners at home because you have a big dining table with a professional kitchen for doing things together. What type of collective spaces? Yeah, collective living space, professional kitchen, multifunctional space for events, a laundry room, a guest room, and several outdoor spaces. There is also 10% of non-housing space that is crucial for the business case and also complements the rest of the program since the group, the cooperative, will also actively use it and program it. So of all this, only 55% is private. The project, despite the fact that it is very affordable for the cooperative members, is also very innovative. Is built mostly with wooden structure, cross-laminated timber. And is also built with circular techniques. So one of the principles is that all the building elements are decoupled from each other. Actually, I'm not sure that I agree that it is important to move the walls. I think what is very crucial in buildings is installations that can be changed. So we went through a process of designing spaces that can be adapted by the tenants during the design phase, but also in the future with new programming, new way of life, new household formats. The building is also energy positive, is rainproof. Oh, sorry. Yes, biodiversity integrated, so it's very innovative. Now a little bit about the houses. So as I said, the houses are very compact. This is because it reflects also the population, the needs of the people that are living in there. And I think they also offer types that are not very common in the market nowadays. Here, for example, you see a series of plans developed with the inhabitants for small independent houses of 50 square meters, actually 45 private space plus 5 in the collective spaces. The rent is 800 euros per month. And the apartments are small, but yeah, they are very sporty, but in my opinion, and in the people's opinion, also very nice, because they have a lot of facade. So you are able to have at least 2 bedrooms within 45 square meters. So my house, I don't live here, I have a private house, is about 65 very stupid square meters, because I only have 1 bedroom and the apartment is very deep, and yeah, I don't have capacity of doing this. This is how they look like. On the right there is a picture during construction. We built the building in 1 year through a lot of prefabrication. The houses are, yeah, they were designed as, let's say, kind of standard, a couple of types, and then we went through customization sessions with the inhabitants, one-to-one, to adapt the layouts. So some, they have 1 bedroom, some have 2 bedrooms, and the houses are delivered like this, so kind of Casco Plus, and the people will do it yourself, but mostly do it together. So it's a process organized by the entire cooperative. They will do the finishes of the interiors. And another pro of using wooden load-bearing structure is that all the wood that you see in the picture can just be left exposed, so you don't need to invest in finishing it. So this is a 1-floor apartment. And this is one of the duplex apartments that have living spaces downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs. This is about, yeah, 10 square meters more than the other one. Then the Vaughan groups. In the tall part of the building, we have 7 floors. The lower 2 are dedicated to collective spaces, and the top 5 floors, we have 5 living groups, Vaughan group. Each one is about 200 square meters, and because they are very flexible, each Vaughan group can adapt the floor plan to their needs and decide what is shared by the group and what is private. You see here in yellow what is shared, and in white what is private. And you see that the formats are very different from each other. And these are not like, how to call them, student housing apartments, but these are intentional communities, are people that decided to go live together, and there are very different formats. So there is one floor is reserved for elderlies. In one floor there are people that want to raise children together, so kind of different family formats. Yeah, this is a picture of the one of the floors during construction, and here, yeah, I think the picture was taken a couple of weeks ago. The building will be delivered the 1st of April, and here on the right there is one of the, yeah, no, more than one Vaughan group, so a few people on a shared terrace. Yeah, this is my partner Mira in Time to Access. Inside this staircase is like object outside the building. And here on the corner there is the non-housing space that will have event space and cafe on ground floor, and a co-working space and workshop room on the 1st floor. So to close, I think that these communities, they have a big potential in themselves, but also in the area where they are gonna stand, because it's a community project. They tend to replicate these collective structures inside and also outside themselves. For example, under the nesting category, there are many projects happening within the project. So there is a project for elderlies, for their care. There is a diversity and accessibility project. 5 of the independent houses, they have extra accessibility features. We have 1 unit reserved for undocumented people. There is the project to finish together the interiors, and it was established a workers' cooperative to run the non-housing space. And then federating, so what happens outside the cooperative. They are working together with an energy coop to create sustainable projects in the neighborhood. They are setting up an educational garden with the school next door. They're setting up a car sharing program together with other people in the neighborhood. They are part of Autonomous Housing Coalition, so connected with and the platform von Cooperatie Amsterdam PVA is like a lobbying network to help more projects like this to sprout in the city. And last bit about what is going to happen in the future. So the people, they are not building equity. They will keep paying rent. This type of projects raise more or less 1 million euros in rent every 2 years. At the beginning, we need to pay debts, of course, to the bank, to the city, crowdfunders. But at one point, we'll start having a surplus. So this will be enormous potential, enormous capital. What do we do with this money? Of course, a part is reserved for maintenance and management of the building. A part is reserved for taking care of the new members. And then most of the money will go in creating sustainability projects in the neighborhood and keep financing the cooperative sector. So now for these pilot projects is the most difficult time because we cannot rely on each other to put together the investment money, but in the future when there is a multiplicity of these kind of projects, to finance more is going to be easier. Yeah, I think that's it.
Just ask some questions and then I leave it up to you guys. Nicolas, Andrea. Oh, you want to sit here? Okay. Okay. Then you sit there. No. Okay. One of the questions that came to me was to get something like, I mean, the project that Andrea showed was, it came out a little bit in the end, but it's nearly understated, but these people are real idealists, right? Yeah, so they, do we have another mic? Or do you have okay, they're real idealists, so that's what you need in the beginning, probably. But is to get things like this off the ground, what is the kind of, do you see a kind of social movement sprouting from this? Could you say something about that?
Yeah, I think that especially the very first projects are very idealistic. The new element is for sure a very idealistic and politicized community. And I see that the movement is kind of growing. But the projects are also diversifying a lot. So like there is often the critique that housing cooperatives are for the few, that you need to be, I don't know, young and well educated and with a lot of time to do it, but that's not really the case. Also because there is a pool of experts that are growing, the city is learning, policies are also scaling up from local to state level. So yeah, there is for sure like a movement component. But I hope that in the future this type of projects are accessible to everyone. There is also a need of literacy because people, they just don't know that this is the third way exists. And our more recent projects, they are completely different, the members. For example, we are doing a project with a group of nurses from one of the hospitals of Amsterdam. There is a big shortage, especially in the middle rent sector. And this type of workers, like teachers, police officers, they're really struggling in living in expensive city as Amsterdam. And now they are collectivizing and starting to make their own cooperatives. So we are even going back to this type of workers housing facilities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And for Nicolas, I was thinking, you showed us very clearly the kind of realpolitik also behind the housing system in a country like Belgium, but I'm sure that here it is no different, that there are certain advantages for, let's say, the government to promote individual housing. For example, the kind of desolidarization of people, the kind of a certain type of tax income, etc. How would you, so if you look at it like strategically, would something like the housing cooperative, would that be against the political interests of the, let's say, the parties that are now in power? Or is there a way to also make it politically viable? Maybe you can,
Thank you. So I propose to answer in both languages,
yes.
in French and in English.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will be longer in French. I'm sorry. I begin in French, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry. Alors, la question est très bonne. La coopérative d'habitants est vraiment une solution qui peut séduire tous les partis politiques, puisque c'était votre question.
So it can seduce all the political parties, the housing cooperative.
After I will
oh,
try
so
to
you
translate.
do it yourself?
Not you.
Okay,
No,
okay.
no. I didn't want to bother you.
That's wonderful of Belgians.
no.
They're so flexible in language.
No, actually not. Les socialistes, la coopérative est à la base une idée de gauche, puisque les travailleurs sont aussi les détenteurs du pouvoir. Donc c'est une idée de gauche, et donc ça peut séduire le Parti socialiste. Ça peut séduire aussi la droite, parce que la droite veut sortir du logement social, sortir du logement public. La droite veut permettre la création de solutions individuelles qui viennent des gens, pas des grosses structures publiques. Et ça peut aussi séduire les écolos, les écologistes, parce qu'il y a une dimension de durabilité, il y a une dimension d'usage prudent, parcimonieux de la terre, il y a une dimension vie collective qui peut séduire les écologistes. Et donc, c'est une idée qui peut avoir du succès auprès des trois grandes familles politiques. So, I will try to translate in Dutch. It can seduce left wing because cooperative is initially an idea for the workers, because the workers are the owners of the enterprise. It can seduce also right wing, because right wing wants to go out from social housing, public housing. Left wing, they want to promote solutions that came from the individuals. They don't want big structures. And it considers also green parties, because cooperative housing try to save land, try to not to consume too much energy, too much land. There is a collective way of living, so it can also seduce green party. So normally, cooperative must be one rare measure.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consensus.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyone from the audience? Yeah. Jonas.
Thank you. Thank you both. It was very interesting. I have one question for both. I'll make it short. You just talked a little bit about the financing of the projects, about the mix. So you had banks, crowdfunding, and the city, if I heard well. I know one other initiative in Amsterdam, the Trekvogel, and they are struggling really, really much to know how to put all of this together. Most of them are students, they are quite young, and they are working around, more or less literally, asking, going to events, going to some museum where some people of municipality will be there, and trying to find, let's say, the easy way. Yeah, okay, you're already almost answering. Can you give some more details about that, about the founding and how difficult it was?
Well, it is very difficult. Also, this project went through Corona and the Ukraine war that made the construction costs skyrocket everywhere. So it was a very big struggle. I think the most difficult part of the project. But yeah, now I think with the experience of the first projects, now there is kind of like a known path into financing this kind of projects. The banks, they stop at around 60% of everything. The city gives a loan with very good conditions based on the amount of houses. But I don't think it makes sense to go too much in detail. It's difficult because you need to convince a lot of parties. But what is good is that this movement, as you called it before, has also places where they meet, share knowledge. There are also other firms like me or other cooperative experts that can advise new groups. Me personally, we always try to work in a collaborative way, so to share all our knowledge. The new event also does the same. So if this group of other groups, they want to come forward, we can share our knowledge. It's a little bit a pity that in Amsterdam there is, to assign the plots, competition culture. So this puts a little bit groups against each other. But I think when everybody has the same information, then the best quality should emerge. And in Amsterdam it's difficult, but there are a lot of incentives to make cooperative housing happening. That's why it's not flying anywhere else in the Netherlands.
Anyone else? Yeah. Oh, Nicolas.
Yeah. Okay, first French, then Dutch. Alors le financement pour le CLT, le Community Land Trust, il y a un financement de départ qui est une aide publique pour que le CLT achète un terrain. Et une fois que le terrain est acheté, il n'y a plus d'aide publique. Le système est autosuffisant puisque le CLT rachète les logements au prix de départ avec juste un quart de la plus-value. Et donc il n'y a plus besoin d'aide publique qui vient alimenter à chaque fois les hausses de prix. Donc ça, c'est assez pratique. Alors pour la coopérative, on n'a pas vraiment d'incitant pour l'achat de parts de coopérative. On ne peut pas avoir d'emprunt hypothécaire pour acheter une part de coopérative, et parce que ce n'est pas un droit réel, et le coopérateur n'a pas non plus de prime pour rénover le logement parce qu'il n'est ni propriétaire ni locataire, third way, as you write, et donc il est hors des cases. So as for the financing, the CLT receives a subsidy to purchase the land, and then the system is self-sufficient, because when the CLT buys the right of the member who lives, the price is capped. So you don't need, CLT doesn't need any public assistance to buy it. And for cooperative housing, there is no incentive to buy shares. You can have a mortgage to buy shares because it's not onroerend goed. It's only roerend, meubles. You don't have fiscal solutions to buy this kind of shares. And for the shareholders, cooperators, he cannot receive help for renovate the building because he's neither owner, neither renter. So he's in the middle, and our law is too rigid to consider this kind of situation.
I see.
One of the reasons that housing cooperatives are happening in Amsterdam and not in Rotterdam is because in Amsterdam there is still Erfpacht regime. So all the projects, they don't need to invest upfront in the land. They don't need to pay the land price, but they can pay a canon, a lease on the land. And this is the only way that business case can work.
Okay, I had a question that has to do with something you also remarked about the Nieuwe Meent, which is that there's also space reserved for status holders, right? For asylums or
No, not for asylum seekers, but with people without papers,
documents,
without documents.
without so for the undocumented. Now, and at the same time, as you both explained, that there's no real, except for the initial, for an initial investment, maybe there is no, something, a housing cooperative is not a public body, right? It is not, so is there not a risk, and is there not a risk that questions like housing the undocumented or housing the documented, but the status holders, things like that, housing the poor, that it becomes a sort of charity by the idealist parts of the housing cooperative owners? You know, and both of you are living in cities that once were kind of socialist republics, right? The Brussels has this amazing history with the Palais des Peuples and the socialist movement. But what the socialist movement managed to do was to make things that were idealism once, they put them in law, and it became rights for everyone. There was no question you would have a right to something. There was no charity. So how do you see, for me that is one of the few kind of doubts that I have about the housing cooperative as a model, that it maybe goes back to a kind of the early days of the social reform movements, when they were still kind of, it could be the enlightened factory owner, it could be, etc. It could be enlightened but limited groups that were made themselves responsible for the life of the poor. So.
Well, I don't think that this type of projects, at least for sure now, for sure not now, can solve problems like housing the undocumented. But the Nieuwe Meent is a very symbolic project. So the fact that they managed to do it working within the cracks and of the legislation and because of their autonomy. So they can select their members. They don't need to have 15 years waiting list. Is showing everybody that this is possible. So why is not anybody in the city housing undocumented people? They need to live in the street. If we can, a lot of people can. If we can build social housing with such a quality, so sustainable, why are housing corporations not up to this standard? If we manage, they also can. So I think, it's kind of symbolic
Creating
act.
evidence.
It's a symbolic act. It's also a demand of this specific community of have a diverse population and tackle these social problems. But
how do you see this, Nicolas? Because you showed in the beginning, you went through this list where you scored the different alternatives or the different existing possibilities, like the municipal housing with subsidies, etc. How do you see a way forward in the sense of the right to housing, the social question of housing?
The way forward.
Yeah.
Ok.
Yeah.
Alors, je crois que le vrai pas en avant serait de donner une part du logement social, du budget du logement social, à des initiatives plus individuelles, plus limitées, plus collectives, moins dirigistes. Je crois que ça, c'est le pas suivant. La politique du logement social a été très fort poussée parce que ça crée de l'emploi, parce qu'à certaines périodes de l'existence, il fallait relancer l'économie, et donc le logement social avait cette fonction d'adjuvant pour l'économie. Et donc, je crois qu'on a un petit peu instrumentalisé le logement des gens avec cette considération économique, et que maintenant, il faut promouvoir des initiatives plus isolées, plus bottom-up, et la vieille idée suivant laquelle le logement public est un levier très important quantitativement pour loger beaucoup de personnes, c'est une idée qui est dépassée, puisque dans les faits, on construit peu de logements sociaux. À Bruxelles, c'est tellement long, tellement cher que on ne peut même plus dire qu'on a là un outil massif de production publique de logements pour les plus pauvres. Non, le logement social devient une espèce de source de discrimination. Certains ont un logement social, ils payent 2 fois moins cher toute la vie. D'autres n'ont pas de logement social, ils payent 2 fois plus cher. Et donc, il y a un système là qui est devenu discriminatoire. Bon, how to translate? Yeah.
Summarize yourself.
Oh no, it's too long. I'm sorry.
Shall I try?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try. Thank you.
You say that the way what I understand is that you say the way forward is to incentivize and facilitate the more collective and individual, I mean separate bottom-up initiatives like the housing cooperatives. You also said that in the time of the massive construction of social housing, this was also a kind of industrial politics, right? To create employment, not just to create the houses, but maybe even in the first place to create employment for the building industry. And thirdly, you said that right now, the social housing that is there, the system of social housing is creating a huge kind of unfair situation that is where it is nearly random whether you are in the social housing or not, and whether you pay half the price or you pay the full price.
Thank you very much. That was
You're-
better than me.
Yeah.
I understood now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to I'd like to ask Andrea the first. This also. Tell us a little bit about your illiteracy problem. Do you think we have made steps forward?
No, in fact, this was my question. So this evening is called Housing Illiteracy, and I made housing literacy from it. Yeah, how can more people learn about those interesting things you talked about, and how could that be more attractive to people? So really attractive, not buying, but participating in something like that.
Yeah, I think, well, of course, platforms like this or even more, there are a lot of debates, honestly. I think that in the Netherlands, the theme of housing cooperatives is kind of hot and fashionable. And there are many platforms more popular, more for the sector that are going on. So, in my opinion, if we manage to go outside of Amsterdam and we manage to kickstart more projects, this cooperative sector has the potentiality to grow. Also, let's remember that this is not a top-down operation from the state or cities decided to do housing cooperatives, but this is also a bottom-up movement. It's people that are lobbying for this for many years and eventually succeeding. So I think we just need to all together push it and let it grow a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Since yesterday there's a
No, oops. It has to be
I'd like to add,
recorded,
since
otherwise-
yesterday there's a Rococo in Rotterdam Collective for Cooperatives.
Oh, wow.
So I think you can all Google it if you want to join the bottom-up movement in Rotterdam.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Or yeah, that's.
I didn't set it up, but
Anyone
it's
else?
out there.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was wondering, because there was the in the beginning you mentioned the windfall effect of the kind of equity system behind housing, and we are now also architects, but doing research on equality and housing, and it made me think, and that was a big difference actually, which was mentioned between the Belgian approach where you are a shareholder, which gives you a certain authority on what happens next, while the Dutch system now in a way makes you a perpetual renter. And I grew up in a woongroep, and I have big sympathies to it, but I do wonder what happens in after this first generation. Then if it exists next to a capitalist system, the children of the co-op, will they have equal opportunities in their life as the lawyers' kids who spend the same energy? Basically, because the unfair thing is that all this energy which goes into organizing, self-organizing and doing your own development, the other people, they work more hours and they earn more, and they kind of there is a certain inequality happening there for 40 years. And in a way there should be a certain balance in that. And I know in Amsterdam there was a debate around Harmoniehof, which is a very old cooperative which was never somehow institutionalized by the big system. And there they are fighting about, like, do my children have a right to stay living here? Do they have priority over others? So I was just wondering, did the new main think about that on this very long-term effect?
Well, there is part of part of the regulation for new housing cooperatives is imposed by the government and both state and local government. And you are not just a renter, but you are also a collective owner. So that makes a very big difference with a lot of rights and also a lot of autonomy rights. So part of the regulation for housing cooperatives comes top down, and part of it is defined by the cooperatives themselves in creating their statuten, that is the law that they set up themselves. And these projects are non-for-profit. You cannot sell the property, you cannot split it and sell part of it. So these residential buildings will stay outside the market forever. Also what you can do, you can reduce rental price, the adjustment of rental prices for inflation, reducing it. So the apartments, they will become cheaper and cheaper in the future.
But the thing is, how do you build up equity?
Why do you need to?
No, because in a declining welfare state, we speculate now,
Yes.
you need to surplus your pension, and that's why it's so advantageous of buying a home, because then you can build up equity. Of course, you can also invest in stocks and bonds, for example.
Yeah.
But I was just also wondering, just like Durian, like how do the people who are now in cooperatives think about their future or the next generation? So really,
Yeah, good question. First, the last part about what you said. I don't think that, as I also tried to say before, housing cooperatives are for the privileged. For example, we are now doing a project in Amsterdam with 132 apartments. Average size of apartments is 60 square meters. And they are made for families of people coming from Amsterdam, New West, mostly second, third generation children of Turkish and Moroccan immigrants that have a full-time job and side to that, they manage to run a huge housing cooperative. So I think, the question of accessibility is also, you can question it. And on the long run, you don't build equity, but also think that these projects are meant for people that cannot get a mortgage at all. So you are becoming not owner, but you are becoming collective owner. You are much more influence on society than being individual owner. On the long run, you can also support more projects. So the new element people, they cannot pass membership to their children, but maybe in the future they will build or co-finance another cooperative where their children can move in.
Okay, I have a last question, I think. Is that okay, or is there somebody from the audience who wants to ask? Oh, Mark.
Yes, just a small question for Andrea about the architecture. I think that the drawings or the GIF or the loops of the drawings were amazing, and I really like the staircases. Very Lina Bobardi kind of vibes. But there's a bit of a paradox for me, because you show all this CLT, right? Very low footprint type of architecture, and then part of it is part of the design is a very, let's say, traditional brick aesthetic. Could you say something about that? What were the considerations?
Well, thanks for the appreciations. The choice of brick maybe is not such immediate simple choice, but we thought that it would fit very well the surroundings. For us, was very important not to create a spaceship, but something really integrated in what it was there. And the bricks, they come from very nearby, like across Dutch border in Belgium as well. And yeah, we try to, yeah, it's also actually traditional brickwork. So it's not like brick strips attached to it, but it's a completely self-standing facade that is detached from what is behind. Also in thinking, well, what will happen of the future. And in a way, I have an idea of architecture, but this is something personal as a designer, that very long-lasting envelope can preserve very flexible interiors. And I'm not really, yeah. Okay, this was one of the reasons, but I'm also looking forward to experiment with more, like for example, wooden facades. Like I think what's something that is interesting is that this type of projects, also with their business cases, they push you in thinking differently about design. For example, you privilege solutions that reduce upfront investments in favor of more maintenance later on, because at the beginning the money that you can pile up are very limited, but in the future you keep raising €1 million every 2 years, so you can upgrade installations, change facade materials, and it becomes a completely different way of conceiving design, I think.
Just an answer to a previous question for the equity. It's a very interesting question. Je crois qu'il ne faut pas comparer le coopérateur à un propriétaire, parce que c'est vrai, quand le coopérateur part, il ne fait pas de plus-value, il ne peut pas léguer son logement aux enfants, mais par rapport à un locataire, sa situation est bien plus intéressante parce que il est sur le long terme dans le logement, il ne doit pas être soumis aux volontés du bailleur, et donc c'est un plus par rapport à la situation du locataire. Et donc il ne faut pas comparer avec la propriété, parce que le coopérateur n'aurait de toute façon jamais eu les moyens de devenir propriétaire, mais c'est vrai que la coopérative est un peu un club select, où l'enfant n'a pas de droit à occuper le logement, puisqu'il faut être dans les catégories des statuts, il faut être accepté par la coopérative, et donc si on n'est pas dans les cases prévues par la coopérative, on ne peut pas continuer le séjour dans le bien, mais par contre, l'enfant a une part qu'il peut revendre et il touche le montant de départ. Donc c'est quelque chose d'un petit peu intermédiaire.
So what Nicolas says is that you shouldn't really compare a house owner with a member of a cooperative, because the member of the cooperative would never have been in the position of the owner in the first place, right? So he would. There's no real. On the other hand, it is true that what makes the position of the cooperativist more interesting than a normal renter is that he is not at the mercy of the landlord. So there's a stability and no stress and until he or she decides to move out or dies, or etc. So and then of course the children, the only real what the children would get is the same position as anyone, that they have to fit the statutes of the cooperative like anyone else, and of course plus the fact that when the parent steps out, he or she gets the money back, and that of course can go to the children. So it's a kind of an in-between position. Of course it doesn't, it's true, it doesn't how do you say, compete with the position of the house owner, but then that's the whole idea of being a house owner, you know? You're a lucky bastard. And you don't earn all the good things you get anyway. But, and I say that as a house owner. But I have is there anyone else? Otherwise I'm going to finish this off with oh, yeah. Yeah.
I might like to briefly add one type of like cooperative social housing that I haven't heard yet this evening, the beheercoöperatie. So the management cooperative, where a social housing association builds a building together with future residents, and then this resident association, the beheercoöperatie, rents the entire building as a cooperative. And they can select residents, and they have their own ownership feeling of the building. They can have a lot of say and community in that building. But advantage is that the funding and the professional development is still done by a housing association together with the future residents. So it's kind of like the 2.5 way of housing, like so it's a very good in-between model, which makes it much more accessible for a wider amount of people. So okay. I'd like to add that because I hadn't heard it yet.
Which goes maybe a little way in the answering of my last question to, and I think I'm going to ask it to our lawyer, our consigliere from Brussels. We are now in Rotterdam, which is a completely different city from Amsterdam. We sold off our erfpacht. We sold it off for a quick buck. And we thought that we would help the developers with that, because we in Rotterdam believe that if you help the building industry, the developers, then this wealth will trickle down and it will also profit the owners. Also, we in Rotterdam believe that if you build more expensive housing, that it will create more wealthy inhabitants. So we have, there's a very capitalist consensus in this city. There's a very strong position of housing developers and property owners, and we don't have the erfpacht anymore. So how can we move forward in the sense of, well, the housing cooperative, since we seem to have a sort of a consensus that that is a good way forward, how do we even make the first step in a city like Rotterdam?
Okay, so I think it was a mistake to sell off the erfpacht. Because the erfpacht, it allows authorities to continue to manage the land, to give another use later, to put duration limited. So after the erfpacht, authorities can choose another use. So it's a pity to abandon this power, but maybe the city can regulate on the land which is not her land, with a regulation about rents, regulation about urbanism, but it's more difficult when you don't have the land in the hands. So regulation is maybe the key, regulations on several levels.
Okay. Let's see how far we can convince our... yeah, please. Yeah. Ah, that's an interesting point. That's the gentleman says that housing corporations, which still have sort of a let's say social mandate, do own land, and that it is possible that they might give out that land in erfpacht to cooperatives. But then, of course, it would take away from what is already social housing, right? Yeah. But the net amount of social housing will not increase. Yeah, it will increase, of course. Will it? More density. All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Andrea, any last words? No? Well, then, thank you all. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you all. This is, I think it was a really, how'd you say, pragmatic also and idealistic at the same time last episode of Back to School with Andrea Prins. Thank you all. And,